Good day. My name is Gary Thompson. I'm a business development consultant by profession. I'm a humanitarian by nature, and I'm the self-published best-selling author for several books. Today with me in the studio is no other than Mr. Claimonte Frank. And Mr. Claimonte Frank, he has an impeccable track record in the academic world and also business and leadership. Today, we will be talking with Mr. Frank, and of course, we want to do a deep dive on a critical issue. That issue, we call it leadership. However, today he will be talking about the 360-degree leadership, which he believes is relevant to businesses and the average individual who wants to achieve more in life. So today he will be taking us on individual can apply 360-degree leadership to their life. Welcome, Mr. Frank.
Good night, Thompson.
Okay.
It's great being here.
It's always a pleasure working with you. Mr. Frank, I want to begin this interview by asking you to tell us a little about yourself. Tell us about your academic background and tell us about your drive and your passion.
The first thing about my academic background, like everybody else, from a poor family, you believe that having that education would propel you to have a higher standard of living, a better lifestyle, move you from the lower class, lower income bracket into at least a middle income bracket. But sadly realize that education, though good, is not the wherewithal to reach to that level.
It doesn't lifestyle. Translate into economic wealth.
So the thing about it is that my first degree is in economics. So I had a grounding from the University of Guyana in that, and then I moved on to the University of West Indies where I pursued economics and international relations. A very good combination because economics is recognized internationally. So my masters were in that. Still trying to decide what I will do with my PhD. And I don't think time is running out, especially when I look around and I'm seeing people at 70 years now accomplishing their PhD. I have a lot of more years for 70, so I still have a chance. But I have taught extensively at the secondary level in the CXC and the CAPE or advanced. And the advanced level is not just CAPE, but and then I've done some lecturing at the University of West Indies.
What are some of those schools that you taught at, Frank?
Oh, I taught at the top high schools in Guyana.
Awesome.
Bishop's High School, Queen's College, St. Joseph. So I've been fortunate to work with the cream of the crop.
High flyers.
The high flyers. The one who really fly high. Right? And so the thing about it is that those experiences have helped me as a lecturer at the University of West Indies.
All right, tell us about your experience as a lecturer at the University of the West Indies.
The University of West Indies is a very intriguing institution. Very interesting because they have an international community. People from various countries go to the Caribbean islands as well as further afield. And My experience there was an awesome one. I still have linkages and friends and colleagues who have worked with, and we still interact today. I have been able to lecture courses such as macroeconomic policies, macroeconomics, statistics, and there's a specific course that we will look at later in when we talk about the Caribbean environment, is Caribbean business environment. It's a course that allows you to look at firms within the CARICOM region and how they are affected in the globalization. And as we get into our lectures, I look at how the CARICOM and the Caribbean region has been affected by globalization, whether positive or negative, right? And so, in a nutshell, I was able to gain a lot of experience lecturing overseas, teaching overseas. Apart from lecturing at the University of curriculum, where I taught at the Mid-Relief International School, which is in Diego Martin in Trinidad. And that was quite an experience because you're dealing with a different culture, right?
Yeah.
Different people with different lifestyles and so on. But it was a very good experience. So that is about me in a nutshell.
And I know you're being modest because, you know, I looking at your CV, I see that you have a whole track record, you know, a very impeccable track record.
Speech, do the rest for me.
All right. Frank, I know that you would have also studied leadership, and you would have also done some work in teaching and leadership. Can you talk to us a little bit about your studies in leadership and just to help us to understand that side of you, that backdrop in relation to leadership?
Well, the thing about my leadership studies is happened per chance, I should say.
Okay.
I belong to a church which is a full gospel fellowship. It was basically established and founded in Guyana by a Guyanese and has spread to a lot of countries around the world, whether it's Europe, Africa, and other ways, and in South America also. They have a progressive way in which leaders in the church should manage the society, the church society. And by extent, they're well able to also take that leadership skill into the workplace. And so we use the John Maxwell curriculum. And in the John Maxwell curriculum, there are a lot of modules on leadership. We've done leadership, the 360-degree leadership. We've done the, doesn't come to mind right now, but a whole lot of those things that will add up to you, to me getting a postgraduate level diploma. What it has taught me is how you as an individual in a leadership position need to show not just that you are a boss or a leader, but you need to show empathy towards your team. You need to be transparent with them. You need to be able to communicate effectively.
Well, that brings me to the next question, and that is, with the rich history that you have in leadership, both in the learning process and in the teaching process, I know you have been in this field for quite a number of years, and of course you call uh, John Maxwell, who is one of the world-class leaders and teachers in terms of leadership. So I'm absolutely certain that you are being trained by one of the international gurus on the leadership. Um, how important, with your knowledge of leadership and the John Maxwell style of leadership, we know he represents one important style. How important is leadership in today's environment, both from a business standpoint and from a private individual standpoint?
But it is very important because what leadership does is that it sets a clear vision, and it also communicates effectively to those who are your subordinates, your colleagues, your team members, those who you rub shoulders with daily, whether it's privately as a family or in a business organization. This clear vision then, Gary, gives your colleagues, those who are your team members, a better understanding of organizational direction, and it makes them realize what are their roles and responsibilities in achieving goals and in achieving whatever vision that has been set before them. And as such, there is importance of leadership, especially when you're talking about business management ideas. For example, when you look at an online retailer who intends to provide customers with best online shopping, the online shopping experience, and what is being used is a smart, searchable website, easy to follow instructions, clear and secure payment methods, transparent delivery system, which allows the customers to track their shipment on a real-time basis. Then accordingly, employees are therefore directed toward providing and maintaining relevant internet tools to cater for their customers efficiently. And it all comes back to leadership being important, because with all that is going on with the retailer intent, they had to have a clear vision, and then they had to communicate not just to the employees, but also to those persons who they have, the customers, so that they can have an effective flow in providing the services that they set out to do. And I hope that answers your question.
Oh, definitely. It did. And I can identify with that because less than 24 hours ago, I'm interfacing with an international payment platform. And of course, some of these platforms, because we've grown and expanded, they're pretty new. But I was happy that within 60 seconds, that's less than a minute of transferring funds, we were able to get a feedback within, real-time record.
Exactly.
He speaks about corporate leadership and to ensure that you're making the customer satisfied, you're removing doubts and fear in terms of financial transactions and so forth. So I can definitely identify with what you were talking about.
And not only that, apart from business, leadership is important in life also. It can benefit every aspect of your life. One, it gives you greater confidence. Two, it strengthens your communication and negotiation skills. And it also develops you as a character. It develops your personality. The values that you learn as a leader can improve your personal life and your relationships. And it sets you, in other words, on the fast track to success, whether in your career and business life or your personal life. And so when we talk about leadership, it's not just about organizations, it's about you personally. It also helps you with your EQ, your emotional intelligence. And if you want to be a leader and you don't have a high EQ, you're not going to be the best leader. Your security
Yeah.
is going to take a hammer, because when you look around and you see members of your team who got more qualifications than you and who are more productive than you, then your security is shaken. You understand? And so the thing about it is that to be able to be the best leader, you don't need to be intimidated by those who have more or know more or have more experience than you. You need to gather them in there, because these are the persons who are going to propel you to achieving those goals that you've set clear in your vision.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy that you just mentioned the word vision, because sometimes when we talk about leadership, the the average person in the public listening to you, with a very keen eye, with a very analytical mind, they are sometimes left to believe that there are 50 shades of leadership, right? Because we can speak to the issue of leadership, and at the end of the day, the average person listening to you there and still does not have a clear understanding in terms of what is leadership. And I pose this question largely based on the fact that we can have great leaders. From an academic standpoint, we were taught from the time you hit university what is the autocratic, democratic, paternalistic leader. These says at least you're seeing three different leadership style here. But we can take all three of these leadership style, and depending where you are in the world today, it will literally influence that environment, will influence where you go as a corporate leader. And let me try to be a little bit more clearer here. And as I speak, I want you to think about vision and leadership, because in many cases, I do believe that we have to link leadership and vision together. Now, I'm making the argument largely based on the fact that I have spent tremendous years studying the top 100 companies in the world. And when we study the backdrop behind those companies, behind those leaders, you recognize that they are forward-thinking individuals. They think ahead, they see beyond problems to take informed actions to achieve desired results. They are not just thinking localized, but they're global thinkers, they're social actors, and they're transformational leaders. And that's a different level of leadership that you see among the most developed countries. And we're seeing these type of leadership where these leaders, they are not only able to adopt a unique corporate culture and wrap a unique leadership style around it, but they're able to drive those companies' income earning potential up to billions, hundreds of billions of US dollars. When we do the comparative analysis of leadership around the Caribbean and other parts of the world, um, what are your thoughts? To me, it leaves so much more to be desired in terms of leadership that we're seeing across the world. They all are learning from the same textbook, what is leadership? But in terms of the vision, they, to me, as we look at the Caribbean reality, they put limits on how far they can go in accomplishing success. Do you see that as a limited approach to applying leadership? Because leadership, I believe, in the truest of contexts, represents connecting with people. It's not just communicating, but it's connecting with people. But as you connect with people, there is where the vision comes into play. All right, because in connecting, I think you should connect in substance where you have that big vision to make great things happen. From your experience, you're taught at the highest academic level within the Caribbean. You have interfaced with business leaders within the Caribbean and from around the world. Do you think that there's a leadership deficit among Caribbean leaders?
The thing about it is that in my study, when I did my international relations, I looked at the SIDS, which is the small island developing states.
Yeah.
Now, why? And I'm glad you raised this, because this was an issue that we've had even when I was a graduate student. Why is it that a man decides that he wants to just be Lord over a small piece of rock?
Okay.
If you talk about leadership, looks at connectivity and most of all, building of relationships. If the Caribbean leaders, and I use the term broadly and slackly, if Caribbean leaders were true leaders, they would have all come together today and it would have been the United States of the Caribbean.
Awesome. Awesome.
With a united front, it's very difficult for you to sway and disarray. People like Burnham and those persons, Errol Barrow, they had the vision of uniting the Caribbean.
So you're referring
what
here
you find
to
happening sometimes is that it fell apart. And if you go back to the history of Carifta, you realize that because somebody decided, I ain't got to report this. They in other words, you must be humble enough to say, you know what, I have this person I have to report to.
Yeah.
I was looking for words and they just slipped me. I think it's old age. But the thing about it is that be humble enough to say, you know, I don't know it all. But when you have a conglomeration of minds coming together, what do you think is going to happen? Why do you think the United States is as great as it today? Despite what you say about the United States, there are different states making up the United States of America.
Exactly.
Do they all agree? No, they don't. But you know, when they go out there, they go as one front. United States of America. They don't say I'm Texan, I am an American. They don't say I'm a New Yorker, I am an American. But in the Caribbean, what we have, I am Bajan, I am Trini, I am Jamaican, I am Haitian, I'm Guyanese.
Although we
Why not can we say that we are Caribbean people?
Yeah, and although we have the single market and economy,
sometimes that is like a white elephant as far as I'm concerned.
Because after 35 plus years,
come on,
so much more is left to be desired.
The same way like how we agree on our West Indian cricket.
Yeah.
The same way how we look at CSME. It's the same way we can become politically united.
All right, and
I must be not too wise enough. So, but that's my huge thing, because they're the politicians and their experience. But when I look at it, I think it's anyway. I don't want to say it here, so let's move on.
I got you. I got you. So it's clear that there is some degree of,
Not degree. There's lack of
leadership deficit in those regards.
And I want to stick in this for persons who are listening and who are interested in leadership. I am not going to give you a whole lot of things, but if they ones who want to write, there are 5 ways basically that if you develop leadership skills, it will benefit your life and your career. And the first one is it improves negotiation skills, something that most politicians are sadly lacking. Can't negotiate. Not only politicians, can't blame everything on the politicians, but businessmen can't negotiate. It helps you, the second one, to develop greater self-confidence, which is something that we find lacking in our societies. We don't have much self-confidence, right? The third one is it inspires initiative. If we can have and use the hidden talents and use our initiative to bring it forward, well, we'll be a better place. Why are we hearing only places in Nigeria so that students are having high IQ and whatever? And you rarely hear it in these parts of the world. So yeah. Inspire initiative, right? The fourth one, it builds character. Builds character. And I repeat it again, build character. Sadly, we are lacking character in this generation. Sadly. But getting leadership, it will build our character. And the last one is it increases your communication skills. We see something going across the social media this time. I will not say what it is, but you will know. And when you look at the skill in communication, I shiver. I
got you. Among the 5 that you have spoken about is self-confidence. I want to add to it. In one of my books, I did mention this, the importance of self-confidence, self-application, self-knowledge, self-confidence, and self-application. And, the great book said, that so as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The other part of it is that we can never grow beyond our sense of self. So later on, we'll go deeper into all of that, but for now, we're going to just be at the surface, because we know that we are where we are at as a people, largely based on our sense of self. All right, we can apply ourselves beyond how we see ourselves. However, today we're talking about 360-degree leadership. And Frank, can you share with us the importance of the 360-degree leadership and who is the author for this unique leadership model?
All right. It's basically, when you look at a 360-degree, it is a leadership with a feedback process. This is a great tool for giving leaders clear feedback from peers, employees, and managers. When you look at a 360-degree circular, think about it, think of it as a ball. There's the top part, the bottom part, and then the sides. As a 360-degree leader, you're leading from the center outwards. As you lead from the center outwards, what you're doing is you'll be able to get feedback from persons who may be at the top there, from those who are at the bottom, and from those who are all sides. What this does, it creates strong motivation and a specific focus to improve skills and performance. Another thing that you have is competencies, which are clearly spelled out, expectations for a certain role or a job, the certain role as a leader or the job as a sales associate. So the 360-degree leader then is the one who leads from the center with feedback coming to them. Now you ask, and I should tell you why this is important before I move on to who the author is. The process of completing 360 degrees, it provides the raters with a greater insight and an understanding into the values and behaviors that are important for team success. Team success. If you're seeing how others are being evaluated, it will allow you then, as a team member, to formulate your own expectations around goals for performances and behavior. And so it is important that when we think about leadership, if we can think in leadership with a 360-degree feedback, you're in a powerful position. You don't think yourself as better than the others who are at the bottom, top, or around you. You look as all as your colleagues here, because what you're trying to do is make sure that for this process to go forward, you must have feedback. You must know what the other person is thinking. Tell me what are your thoughts on this, and how can we improve? How can we make this business a better place? How can we in this family become a better family? How can we in this society become a better society? It's not one man making all the decisions, but a team of people, with a leader being able to say, you know what, I'm not better than A, I'm not better than B, C, or D. But we're all on this level where they look at me in the center as the leader, but at the same time, I am also gaining from them, respecting them, making sure that their morals are intact.
Right. Correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm also getting here from the feedback that you're talking about is that the 360-degree, correct me if I'm wrong, should represent the feedback, interpretation of that feedback, or documentation of that feedback. And you having perhaps your project managers who are cataloging those database, and they are building up game plan to treat with those feedback mechanism that you're getting.
And you're correct. You're very correct, because when we talk about this, because a 360-degree leadership assessment is basically a form of feedback. Feedback for who? For leaders in which their skills, their effectiveness, and influence as an executive, as a leader or manager, they're evaluated. So when you have this sort of evaluation, the leadership in the company receives feedback from a set of colleagues. And so you're right. Whether it be the project manager, whether it be the team leader, whether it be the CEO, there must be feedback. Most organizations I find now, especially in the developed world, they are going towards the 360-degree leadership. It's not all about, oh, I am the boss of this organization, what I say goes. Those days are long gone. You need to understand that there are persons who may leave a class, just come in.
You
But
know,
they may be able
You often talk about empathy in leadership. I know you did run some lectures for us previously, and you always talk about empathy in leadership. And as we move around developing economies and middle income economies, we're seeing that there's a greater need for empathy among leadership. In the developed world, you have so much of aha moments when you look at those developed countries, those companies that are functioning, who are the game changers and dream makers in those developed companies. For example, let's talk a little bit about the empathy element here. I'm studying these international brands, and I'm seeing that they provide free medical support to the entire workforce. That for me speaks about empathy. They provide daycare for the toddlers, the staff that have toddlers. While it is looking like, while it is empathy, what it does, it brings down the high level of insecurity that can arise when you as a parent, you have your child out there and you're not, the end of work time reach, you have to go over time and a concern raise up. So they have built out framework and ecosystems that speaks to empathy in a very in-depth manner. And that's just listing two of the, unique corporate traits that I'm seeing among top companies, top 100, top 500 companies. They have a higher level of empathy. So I just bring that up because I know to bring some clarity to what you're saying. So, because sometimes we talk about empathy, and empathy is like an abstract word, and we want to know that they're clear.
The thing about, and what you say is basically right. I was reading just the other day about a man who has a company, and because of the COVID experience, he realized most of the staff would have had to be sent home. But instead of sending them home, he took from his own profit and paid those staff during that period when it was very difficult. You know what he got from that? Loyalty. Because they're moving from there because this boss, hey, he looking out for me. Even if they last said, he looking out for me. So if things go good, I'm with him. If things get a little rough, I'm staying with him. You see, the thing about empathetic leadership is where you have the ability to lead while understanding the context, experiences, and needs of others. And you're being aware of their thoughts and feelings. It is basically then the ability to live and experience the story of another as if it were your own. So what you're doing is you're taking on the problem of the worker as if it's yours.
Frank.
Is that so bad?
Frank, brilliance. And as we talk about the issue of leadership, I want to add in my book, I have introduced a new concept that we call the proactive leadership. And the proactive leader has three central characteristics. One, they think ahead. They don't wait until a disaster strikes and then you start thinking. They see beyond problems and they take informed action to achieve desired results. One of the things that I would really like to see is that our Caribbean leaders, all right, leaders among developed and developed middle income economies, they can reach that point to speak to some of those same issues. But are we thinking ahead about corporate cash flow protection? So when a disaster strikes, you have a cash flow protection game plan. Are you thinking ahead about corporate paycheck protection program. So when disasters strike, you have a safety mechanism to protect all of your employees. You don't throw them under the bus, you don't drop the mic on them. They're innovative approaches that can be used to accomplish all of this. Are we thinking ahead in terms of the personal cash flow protection program for our employees? The beauty about all of this, when you have great leaders on your side, this don't have to cause company leaders an arm and a leg. In fact, we have built out system where there can be zero cost attached to this.
And there is where, Gregory, Gary, well, I'm saying Gregory, there is where
That's my
the
brother's name.
importance of the 360-degree leadership in business comes into play.
Awesome.
Because when you have all this team of people, there should and so when you have that, they are going to be able to bring to the table how is it and lay out whatever you have said there. These pandemics and natural disasters and so on, there is a fallback, and a good fallback too. All right. So, but it needs also financial intelligence, which is important. And being your strong point, you can now see and relate to why the 360-degree feedback system is good in business.
Okay. All right. I must.
And you asked a question about who is the author of the 360
Yes.
It is Mr. John C. Maxwell. And he's a #1 New York Times bestselling author. He's a coach, speaker. And this man has sold more than 33 million books in 50 languages.
Wow.
And he's identified as the #1 leader in business and the most influential leadership expert in the world. And so for me, it's an honor, it's a privilege that I have been trained under this sort of curriculum.
Well, you're rubbing shoulders with the best of the best, and I think that is an awesome experience. We're happy to have you be part of our team, so you can also transfer that rich body of knowledge to persons in the business.
That's what we're here for, to teach and to mentor.
Exactly. All right, I'm going to move to another question. In terms of leadership, how ready are Caribbean businesses to compete and win globally?
All right. When we look at Caribbean, we find that there are some obstacles that the businesses face. And if we want to have a more productive Caribbean, we have to overcome those obstacles. And let me quickly say, what are some of the barriers we face in Caribbean countries? One is the access to finance. Because the countries or companies in Caribbean, they face greater difficulty. Sorry about that, I should have turned this off. Just give me a second. Let me turn this off. I'll call it back. Sorry about that.
All right.
Companies in the Caribbean face greater difficulties in accessing credit than in other small countries. You find that 26% of firms believe that difficulties in accessing credit are a severe obstacle to growth. If you can't get finance for your company, your growth is being stifled. And these financing problems have an important negative impact on businesses and the ability to innovate. In addition, when we look at the women-managed enterprises, they have additional difficulties accessing credit. And this helps explain a productivity gap found between these companies and those are managed by men. The second barrier that they need to overcome is cost and time to export. Let me repeat that: cost and time to export. Time to export has a negative impact on how much businesses spend on innovation. On average, it takes more than twice the time to export from the Caribbean than from small countries in, say, Central America that compete in the same industries. And the cost of complying with documentation is much more expensive. And so when we look at the cost for the exportation and the time for exportation, the turnover, this is where in the Caribbean we find that there is a negative impact. The other thing, the third one, is where there's barriers of knowledge. And when I talk about knowledge, there's a few policy conditions that affect businesses' incentives. And then there's the ability to incorporate what I would say new knowledge. So when we have weak protection of intellectual property, which provides few incentives for innovation, then the context of low skills in the workforce makes it more difficult for potentially innovative firms to discover, to incorporate and observe new knowledge. Indeed, Caribbean companies employing higher proportions of, let me say, skilled workers, they're more likely to innovate. The private sector in the Caribbean, Guyana as well, report weak links with universities, as well as difficulties in collaborating with labs, with research centers, and even other companies in the same sector. And this negatively impacts innovation by reducing opportunities to create and disseminate knowledge. When we look at the fourth one, which is business climate, what is the business climate in the Caribbean? In addition to the difficulty in accessing financing and the cost of exporting, the research explored the impact of competition, which is from formal and informal enterprises, on innovative behavior. More than half, more than 50% of the companies that were surveyed, which is like 55 to 60%, they face competition from the informal sector. We experienced right there in Guyana. Now, while competition, both formal and informal, increases the likelihood that firms will innovate, it does so in the form, and in economics we call it an inverted U. That is, innovative behavior increases when there is little competition in the market, but decreases when competition becomes very strong. And the research found that there's not enough formal competition in the Caribbean to stimulate the optimal point of innovation. But on the other hand, there is too much informal competition, thus discouraging innovation. When you look, Gary, in the Guyana situation, for example, how many informal firms are there where you walk down Regent Street is a whole set of them line the street? What kind of formal, how can the formal they go and they gang up right in front of the formal companies. So reducing informality and increasing competition from formal enterprises should increase the rate of innovation. Let's look at this, the fifth one, which is infrastructure. That research also explored the impact of power outages, something that happens in most Caribbean countries, especially Ghana. Power outages of businesses, and found that those companies facing outages reduce the number of permanent employees. And almost all jobs lost were jobs held by women. The loss of jobs in the average firm is equivalent to about, say, 40,000 US dollars lost in terms of wages. One aspect also addressed in the research is the impact of public promotion programs on productivity and innovation. And it was found that those companies that participate in these programs, they increase their sales and their ability to innovate and spend more on innovation. Now, while these are not the only obstacles, the research findings provide what we call a preliminary agenda for increasing productivity and innovation in the Caribbean and Guyana, and provide a guide to design what we consider as support programs. We don't have enough time for me to go into all of those support programs, but in the Caribbean, when we look at I talk so much I forget the question. Was that question about the
our readiness to compete internationally?
In terms of leadership, how Caribbean business will compete?
Yeah.
Good. What we need to understand is that if we are going to look at globalization and how it affects the Caribbean, we find that, and this it seems to be a global thing also, because in the research, it's not only Caribbean affected, but you have Africa, Asia, and so on. What are the benefits here for the Caribbean? The benefits of globalization can be seen in many walks of life here in Guyana and the Caribbean. So
right.
the region exports labor. We train our nurses, they go overseas. Including those who are highly skilled. And where do they go? They go to industrial countries. There are large Caribbean communities outside the region. So what happens is that when you have those large, in international relations, the diaspora, what do? They remit. So the Caribbean countries benefit from the remittances, which have raised living standards of us at home. You were interjecting something just now, like before I go on.
Yes, yeah. I'd want to raise 2 points based on your first response to the question, and that is, what the research is saying to me that local content, local players, they are not even prepared to compete with FDIs. We see what happened with oil and gas. We see what happened with foreign direct investment that are coming in. Because what is happening when FDIs come, they are coming not only with a will to integrate their brand locally, but they're coming with all of the technical supports, capital support, human support, the innovation behind industrialization, and you find at a localized level that is a high level of competition that we are not ready for. Even after 1 year, 2 year, and 3 year of preparedness to embrace the realities around oil and gas, we still have many of our players that are still trying to come up to scratch with companies in the developed world. They have access to a mixed capital market, because one of the first points that you would have raised is access to capital. And what my studies is saying to me is that they have access to capital markets like credit capital markets, where they are able to access capital at 0% APR, annual rate of return. And who can compete with that low or zero APR for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? It gives you a tremendous financial advantage in terms of, in putting those capital back into a range of business developmental possibilities. In the region, we don't have all of those options. And that in itself makes us uncompetitive when it comes to accessing capital at competitive interest rate. How can we compete with a highly developed country that have all of these capital incentives that are there? So we are seeing that many of those companies that have become mega companies today, in their mom and pop stage, in the startup stage, they had access to these capital market that helps to fuel innovation, that helps to fuel a globalized way of thinking, that helps to fuel a highly competitive approach in terms of doing business. But capital, for many years, we have been having this conversation for the last 15, 20 years and longer. And today we still have not fixed that issues in terms of ensuring that we can give Caribbean companies the level of competitive advantage that they need, or to put them on a level playing field to compete wherever in the world based on access to capital at highly competitive rate. And of course, I raise only credit capital as being one of those platforms. The companies in the developed world, they have access to equity capital. I know in some parts of the Caribbean, they have a stronger stock market, they have a stronger equity financial platform. And in those countries where we do not have this that is fully developed, there is an absolute need. The time is long overdue to ensure that we can now start to speak to having this capital market mixed. And I really hate this when I'm sitting with some intellectuals who are highly influential because they may be lecturers, and you may hear utter trash like they are not ready. People are not ready to grow. When are they going to be ready?
That's my
I
question.
think that your role as the intellectual authors is to influence, to create the enabling environment that can nurture, all right, people from where they're at and bring them to the other point. I'm literally at the last end of listening to those trash that you're not ready. If you're not ready, get them prepared. Years have been passing in terms of ensuring that you're going to prepare them to deal with globalization. I could recall as a youngster coming up, I'm talking with some of those who are in politics today, and we are talking about a globalization and the impact it's going to have on developing economy, and protectionism is not healthy for an economy. But while protectionism is not healthy for an economy, while you're going to remove protectionism, you have to create the environment of nurturing and preparing your local content to deal
And that's good for
with
your point,
globalization.
because, Gregory, one has to think of and look at the Caribbean as a diverse region with significant economic potential and growth opportunities. Now, if you look at the gross national income per capita, it varies from, let's say, 800 US dollars to over 30,000 US dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the countries rely primarily on tourism, while there are others that has commodity exports. I've had a great opportunity of travel in the Caribbean, and it has some stunning scenery and vibrant cultures. And as you know, the Caribbean is one of the world's top tourist destinations. There is sustainable use of our ocean resources, which is known as the blue economy. It offers also potential for economic diversification while preserving of other sectors with potential growth. Now, when we look at many small economies, including those that are tourism dependent, they were maintaining a positive growth rate prior to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Caribbean has been badly impacted by the near halt in tourism. And what occurred is that there was a contract. The economy contracted and estimated like 8.6% in 2020, which is a lot, and by 12.6. And fortunately, Guyana wasn't included in this. Many jobs, as you know, are affected, and a recent high frequency phone survey in one of the Caribbean small states suggests that poverty headcounts are rising. Though the magnitude and duration of this increase will depend on the pace of economic recovery. And the progression of the pandemic and vaccination efforts will have a major impact on the speed and recovery and scope of recovery. There's a flip side to that. When we look at Caribbean countries, we realize also that they are extremely vulnerable to climate change and natural disaster. Their extreme weather events are common. The region experienced like 9 hurricanes of category 3 and above between 2019 and 2020. And then there was a record number of named storms in the 2020 hurricane season. Now, you know, when a hurricane strikes, it can wipe out more than the entire annual GDP of a small island. And it's often the poorest that suffers the most. Major hurricanes, we had Dorian in 2019. In April 2021, we had the eruption of La Soufriere, a volcano in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And so what had to happen there was mass evacuations. And look at Haiti. Haiti had a big earthquake, and there was a mass exodus from Haiti into the United States, but that's another story to talk about in another time. So there's widespread impact on the country's people, infrastructure, and economy. Now, if you're going to look at the building fiscal and financial needs and investing in preparedness, whether it's physical, health related, or or social safety nets. These are critical to reducing large human and economic costs caused by climate change to the Caribbean, and it also aims to develop new source of economic growth and high productivity jobs, which will require investing in people and climate adaptation, improving the investment climate and connectivity, and safeguarding environment. Now, how can all this be accomplished? Do we run to the World Bank or the IMF? What do we do? So the thing about it is that when you go to the World Bank and the IMF, you are saddled with big interest rates. And one of the things I find out in my research, when the small countries, the SIDS and the poor countries go to the IMF and so on, they saddle them with all this big chunks of interest that they really need. That money isn't coming to us. We're not getting anything from them. And look at the system that they have when they give to Norway
the bigger
and
country,
those rich countries.
They have a lower interest rate.
They have a lower interest. So we can never be on a level playing field.
There is so much to discuss as we speak about Caribbean leadership and Caribbean business readiness to integrate into global trade. I think that we have covered a lot for this evening, and what we will do is we will continue this discussion and begin to examine specific pockets and dig in deep into that. A very important issue that I would like to talk about is sovereign wealth funds and how those monies can be better invested locally with all of the safety nets that can be put in place to ensure that economies are getting dividend yields higher perhaps, and shifting the sovereign wealth fund wherever else. And that's the subject matter that I would really like us at some point to really get into. All right, using your SWF to stimulate local content development and so much more. But what would be your...
In Guyana, that sovereign wealth fund is what is called the Natural Resources Fund, or the NRF.
Yeah, but we're not just talking Guyana. We want to, wherever it's at. Part of my long-term vision is to identify more innovative ways that I believe our leaders can use it, because of course, what normally happens, the capital goes international. The capital is utilized by the global intermediary and the boutique intermediaries. And it goes back into making capital available for those economies. All right, those big businesses. All right. While there's no harm with all of that, we have to now start talking about stimulating a strong stock exchange market and putting in all of the safety nets, perhaps working with the Security Exchange Commission and all of the stakeholders necessary to ensure that monies can be pumped back into local content and business development. Oh, but what would be your parting words, my good friend?
I didn't hear you well that does not.
Yes, I would say that we're at the end of program time. So of course I'm asking for your
Feedback.
your parting words of wisdom to the business community, to the general public, relevant to the 360-degree leadership. Yeah.
Right. What I need to say before I go is that the 360-degree feedback process is a great tool for giving leaders clear feedback from their peers, employees, and managers. And it creates a strong motivation and specific focus to improve their skills and performance. And when you look at competencies, which are clearly spelled out, expectations for a certain role, which I mentioned, a leader or a job, which is a sales associate or a teller, they go far beyond the job description to create a template for ideal performance. And the 360-degree feedback tool can then be used for things such as hiring, day-to-day coaching, training and development, and even performance reviews. And so this is one important and powerful tool that is needed. And as time progresses, I'm going to go a little deeper into what the 360-degree leadership is all about.
Awesome. Well, Mr. Frank, as usual, I think today we have stepped up our conversation to another level. And I must thank you for taking the time out to be a part. And of course, I'm going to be putting to work that rich intellectual competence that you have. I'll be pulling out all of those experience you have as a lecturer at the University of the West Indies, and so much more. So I want to say thanks again for spending this time with me, spending this time with the listeners across the world. And I trust that they were able to extract a lot of lessons, a lot of nuggets from the facts and the content that you have presented to them today. Thanks again, and I look forward to do this with you sometime next week again.
You're welcome, sir.
Thanks again. You too, my friend. All the best.